Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In this video, we're going to be discussing Severus Snape, aka the Half-Blood Prince. When Harry first takes Slughorn's potion class, he is without a textbook. He's then instructed by Slughorn to go and find a spare textbook in the classroom. Little did he know at the time, but the textbook that Harry found was huge for him in this particular school year. Harry sought to become one of Slughorn's favourites, and to become selected by Slughorn, and in order to do so, he needed to excel in his class. The copy of Advanced Potion Making that he found allowed him to do just that. After opening the textbook, Harry immediately notices writing inside. This book is a property of the Half-Blood Prince. Harry uses the book for quite some time, as for each and every one of Slughorn's lessons, the book provided easier and clearer instructions that he could follow. The book was like having cheat codes to all of the potions lessons. But inside the book was not just advice on how to make potions. There were also spells written inside, spells that Harry hadn't seen before. In my most recent video, I discussed Sectumsempra, and why I felt that it wasn't an unforgivable curse. If you haven't seen that video yet, then go and check it out after this. Sectumsempra is perhaps the most notable of the spells that Severus Snape created, and it was written right in Harry's copy of Advanced Potion Making. Harry, who isn't entirely sure what the spell does yet, actually uses the spell on Malfoy, which was a bit of a mistake. Anyway, Sectumsempra isn't the only spell that Snape has created, and in this video I'm going to be diving into each of the spells that Severus Snape is responsible for producing. Before we get started, it's worth mentioning that spell creation can be highly dangerous and has proven to be extremely difficult. Only witches and wizards with extreme patience and an astounding understanding of magic have been able to successfully invent new spells. Snape, by any standard, has been extremely successful. First, let's get the one that you know already out of the way, Sectumsempra. We first see Sectumsempra in the films when Harry uses it on Malfoy in The Half-Blood Prince. The name Sectumsempra comes from the combination of two Latin words, sectus, which means having been cut, and semper, which means always. Sectumsempra is a vicious dark curse that acts like an invisible sword, causing lacerations, hemorrhaging, and cuts upon its target. Often after being struck, the target will lay there motionless as they lose blood. It is somewhat of a specialty of Snape's and is featured in his textbook for Advanced Potion Making. After Harry discovers Sectumsempra, he first uses it on Malfoy, and then even tries to use it on Snape himself, to which Snape responds, "You dare use my own spells against me, Potter?" Harry was of course unsuccessful at using the spell on Snape, as he knows it better than anyone. The following excerpt describes the effects of the spell. Blood spurted from Malfoy's face and chest, as though he had been slashed with an invisible sword. He staggered backward and collapsed onto the waterlogged floor with a great splash, his wand falling from his limp right hand. Slipping and staggering, Harry got to his feet and plunged toward Malfoy, whose face was now shining scarlet, his white hands scrabbling at his blood-soaked chest. During the Battle of the Seven Potters, Snape attempted to use the curse to sever the hand of a fellow Death Eater, but due to a slip, he accidentally cut off George Weasley's left ear instead. The following exchange between Remus and Hermione explains this. "He lost an ear," said Lupin. "Lost an," said Hermione. "Snape's work," replied Lupin. George Weasley's ear was gone for good, as curse wounds are generally unable to be healed, and the counter-curse, which I'll explain next, was unknown to the Order of the Phoenix. This brings us to Snape's next spell, the counter-curse for Sectumsempra, Vulnera sanentur. Vulnera comes from the Latin vulnus, which means wound, and sanentur comes from the Latin sanere, which means to heal. Vulnera sanentur is the only known defense or treatment for Sectumsempra, and is used to ease the blood flow, heal the wound, and remove the effects of the curse. For Vulnera sanentur to be used most efficiently, it has been expressed that the incantation has to be repeated 3 times. The first time the incantation is uttered, it eases the flow of blood. The second time it's uttered, it begins to heal the wounds, and the third time it's uttered, the wounds will be fully healed. In order to prevent scarring, it's also necessary to use dittany, which is a magical plant used in potion making. It's a powerful and restorative healing herb that makes fresh skin grow over a wound. The use of Vulnera sanentur is described in the following excerpt. He knelt over Malfoy, drew his wand, and traced it over the deep wounds Harry's curse had made, muttering an incantation that sounded almost like song. The flow of blood seemed to ease. Snape wiped the residue from Malfoy's face and repeated his spell. Now the wounds seemed to be knitting. The next spell on this list is Levicorpus. Levicorpus comes from the Latin levere, which means lift, and corpus, which means body. This means that the spell could be literally translated to light body. It's unknown when Snape created this spell, but we know that the Marauders knew about it. Most of the spells that Snape created were actually created with his enemies, the Marauders, in mind. According to Sirius Black, he knew more curses when he arrived at school than half the kids in 7th year. The spell became popularized in the time that Snape attended the school, but no one knew that it was him who actually created it. Remus Lupin has expressed that during his time at school, students could barely move about without being hoisted up in the air by their ankle. When Snape created the spell, his intention was that it be cast non-verbally. However, it can also be produced when the incantation is uttered aloud. The following excerpt describes Levicorpus in action. Pointing his wand at nothing in particular, he gave it an upward flick and said, "Levicorpus," inside his head. There was a flash of light. Ron was dangling upside down in midair, as though an invisible hook had hoisted him up by the ankle. The fourth spell in this list is the counterspell to Levicorpus, Libericorpus. The name Libericorpus comes from the Latin words liberare, which means to free, and corpus, which we saw earlier, that means body. It basically means free the body. There seems to be a trend with most of Snape's spells where he creates a counter-curse, and this is no exception. James Potter infamously uses Snape's own Levicorpus spell against him, and then releases him using Libericorpus on Lily's instruction. This is expressed in the following excerpt. He jerked his wand upwards. Snape fell into a crumpled heap on the ground. The fifth spell in this list is the Muffliato charm. The Muffliato charm is less sinister than Snape's other spells, like Sectumsempra, and more just annoying. It's used to fill the ears of any person in the caster's vicinity with an unidentifiable buzzing sound. This allows for conversation to occur without being overheard. It was created sometime between 1971 and 1978, and in the 1988 to 1989 school year, Flitwick actually teaches this charm to his students. After Harry and Hermione learn of this charm, they both get good use out of it. The following excerpt describes the use of the charm. Perhaps most useful of all, Muffliato, a spell that filled the ears of anyone nearby with an unidentifiable buzzing, so that lengthy conversations could be held in class without being overheard. The sixth spell in this list is Langlock. Langlock, like the Muffliato charm, isn't so sinister, but can come in handy on occasion. The word lang is the root for tongue or language, and lock is lock. The spell effectively locks one's ability to speak. It does this by causing the tongue of the victim to affix to the roof of their mouth. It was created to prevent people from speaking out loud, but actually has a practical use in a duel setting, as it could prevent an opposing witch or wizard from uttering an incantation. The spell is said to work on both humans and spirits. Harry notably uses the spell on Peeves the poltergeist, as expressed in the following excerpt. Harry aimed his wand at Peeves and said, "Langlock." Peeves clutched at his throat, gulped, then swooped from the room, making obscene gestures but unable to speak, owing to the fact that his tongue had just glued itself to the roof of his mouth. He also used the spell on Argus Filch twice during the school year, to which he received a general applause. The seventh and final spell on this list is the toenail growing hex, which is a rather innocent hex that causes the victim's toenails to grow at an alarmingly fast rate. The following excerpt describes Harry's discovery of the hex. Harry had already attempted a few of the prince's self-invented spells. There had been a hex that caused toenails to grow alarmingly fast. In 1996, Harry, who wasn't afraid to try out the spells from his advanced potion-making book, actually used it on Vincent Crabbe. It apparently produced very entertaining results. Spell creation is no easy task, so it's impressive that Severus Snape, in his formative years no less, was able to produce so many. Some of the spells that he created are widely used and recognized, and in many cases, people just don't know that he was responsible for creating them. Snape was only 38 years old when he died, but in the time that he was alive, he showed so much promise and so much expertise in so many different areas. I think that if Snape were to have survived the Wizarding War, he could have been one of the most powerful wizards ever. If he had lived a longer, fuller life, then he could have nearly been in contention, power-wise, with the likes of Dumbledore and Voldemort. Not quite there, but almost. And that's it for this video. If you enjoy the content, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. As always, leave your video suggestions down below. Until next time, you're a wizard, Harry!